Hi, this is Dawn. Today we're going to look at how we can recreate the iconic Blade Runner lead brass sound. So one of the really interesting things about Vangelis, in my opinion, is that he was able to make his instruments really sing. When he played them, it sounded like they were breathing in and out. And he did this in a variety of different ways, but one in particular that I found interesting was the slight detune of two oscillators he used to create a phasing sound. At least I think that's how he did it. I'm gonna demonstrate to you how you can create a similar effect by detuning two oscillators. And I've pulled up an oscilloscope here to show you what the waveform looks like, so you get a graphic view of it as I play. So here I have Synth, which is just a standard, very basic synth that comes with Reaper. And when I play, it's just a standard sawtooth waveform, as you can see. Nothing fancy about that. But watch what happens when I add another synth, which acts as my second oscillator, and I slightly detune it. Now when I play, we get that phasing effect happening. And you can see how the waveform is moving. What we're seeing is actually the sum of an interference pattern made up of two different sounds with slightly different frequencies. In musical terms, this is called a beat frequency. And that's what we're actually seeing when we detune these two oscillators. Now, you can do this in any synth that supports two oscillators, but I'm gonna show you how to do it in three different synths that are among my favorites. It's the Arturia CS-80V, the ZebraHZ, and in Vital. So you're gonna want to jump ahead to the synth that suits you the most. Let's get into it. So here we have the Arturia CS-80V. And I'm running version number 4 of this particular synth. And we're gonna go ahead and make the Blade Runner lead brass sound. So let's go up to the presets panel. We'll go down to template and select default. And now we should have a basic saw wave. So let's talk about what these knobs are up here. You'll see there are a lot of them, and it's actually quite simple. We're only gonna use one or two of them. So don't get too confused by all of the knobs. If we look at this upper section here, this is channel number 1, which is controlling oscillator number 1. And down here, it's an identical channel, channel number 2, which controls the second oscillator. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down to the mix tab, and we're gonna double click on the knob here. That way, the synth will play both of the channels at the same time. And you can already hear some phasing going on, but it's way too fast. And that's because by default, the detune is set to 0.16. And we want to change that to about 0.05. Now when I play it, it should sound more like the detune we're looking for. Now what we want to do is we want to build upon this idea of a breathing synth. And we're going to do that by using our mod wheel to modify the low-pass filter of the synth. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and lower the low-pass filter to about, let's say, 150 Hertz. And I'm going to go down here to this down arrow and click on that to copy all of the settings from channel number 1 over to channel number 2. That way they should be synced. And now it's very muffled and we almost don't hear anything. But how do we control these two knobs at the same time so that it doesn't go out of sync? Because if I move this low pass filter up, the second one stays the same. And that causes a problem for us. Luckily, there is a brilliance knob down here, which controls both of the low pass filters globally. So if I just reset the low pass filter to 150. So now if I move the brilliance knob, it controls both of the cutoffs at the same time. So Vangelis probably did it by using his foot pedal to control the modulation of the filter cutoff. I think there's a way in the original CS-80 to control the brilliance with your foot pedal. So that's probably how he did it, but for our purposes we're going to use the mod wheel for this. And to do that, we go up to the Advanced tab, we'll click on Keyboard, and here on the Modulation Wheel section, we'll choose Destination 1 and select Brilliance. And we'll drag up the knob all the way to 1. Now you hear there's a slight wobbling going on, and that's because the mod wheel has a VCO modulation on by default. We want to turn this off, so we'll double click the VCO down here. And that gives us the effect we're after. Next, I want to be able to control the velocity of the keys I'm pressing so that some notes will have a higher attack and some notes will have a slower attack. To do that, we'll go up to the Advanced tab again. And down here where it says Velocity, we'll go to Destination 1, set it to VCA Attack Channel 1. And at Destination 2, we'll go to Channel 2 VCA Attack. And now we're going to drag these down all the way to -1. And finally, we'll alter the attack itself and drag it up to about 400 milliseconds. And I'll press this down arrow key to copy the settings of channel 1 to channel 2 again. Now when I play, you should be able to hear the velocity change. Finally, we'll add a reverb. In my case, I'm going to choose the Valhalla Vintage Verb. And I'll set it to Dirty Hall at 50%. And this is what it sounds like. So that about covers it for the Arturia CS-80V. Next, we'll take a look at the Dark Zebra. So we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing now, but in the Dark Zebra synth. So I'll go ahead and right-click here and initialize the preset. And I'll go down to pitch. Change this to 0. Now we have the default saw wave oscillator. we're gonna go to where it says polywave, single, and change this to dual. Now we want to detune this to achieve the phasing effect that we talked about earlier. So I'm gonna hold down Shift to fine tune, click and drag here up until about 1.0. And there we have the phasing effect. Next, we're gonna add a VCF, which is our filter. We're gonna click on this picture, change this to LP12 dB, and we'll drag down the cutoff to about 60. Now we want to control this with our mod wheel because we want to build upon this idea of giving this synth a breathing sound. So we'll go here to this control knob, select mod wheel, click and drag, and until we get to about 80. Now when I play, I can control the filter with my mod wheel. Vangelis probably used his foot pedal to do this on his CS-80 synth, but we're going to use the mod wheel for this particular demonstration. Next, I want to add some extra control over the velocity of my attack so that I can play some bits with a slower attack and some bits with a higher attack, depending on how hard I press on the keyboard. And I'm going to do that by modifying the attack over here. But there's no control knob to change the attack. So we're going to go to the modulation matrix and go over to our target, click and drag this to our attack. And as our source down here, we'll select velocity. We'll drag this down to a negative number, to about -60. And then we'll increase the attack to about 60. Now when I play it, it'll change the velocity depending on how hard I press the keyboard. We'll go back to the Global Effects tab and we'll change the bend to -12. That way we can get the pitch bend that plays on the last note at the end of the melody. Lastly, we'll add a reverb of our choice. In my case, I'll go with the Valhalla Vintage Verb. I'll set the mode to Dirty Hall and the mix at about 50%. And this is what it sounds like. And that about wraps it up for the Dark Zebra. So let's go ahead and do this in Vital. So I've brought up an instance of Vital, And first, we'll go ahead and initialize the preset if we haven't already done that. Then we're going to go ahead and leave the first oscillator as it is. And we'll open up a second oscillator and slightly detune it. I like to put it at about 3 or 2 in this case. That sounds good to me. So now we detuned it like I showed you at the beginning of the video. Let's go ahead and add a filter. And we want to make sure it's set to both oscillator 1 and 2. We'll turn down the resonance. Now we get a very muffled sound, but we're gonna change that. We're gonna add our mod wheel to the filter so that when I move my mod wheel, the filter will change. And now we're gonna add some extra control to our sound by adding the velocity down here to our attack. And we want to make sure this goes negative to about negative 0.6. And we'll pull up the attack to about 1 second. Now when I play, you'll hear that it's based on the velocity of the notes that I'm hitting. Which gives us a little bit of extra control over how the attack sounds. And then we'll want to go ahead and set our bend to 12. That way we can do the pitch bend at the end of the song. Finally, add a reverb of your liking. I use Valhalla Vintage Verb set to Dirty Hall. And there you have it. That's the Blade Runner lead brass sound on Vital. I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned something new. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more in-depth tutorials. And consider supporting me on Patreon so I can do these more regularly. Thanks for watching and see you next time.